neither is inherently bad, right? And by gas, I'm assuming you mean like farting and tooting and whatever. I'm saying it, you guys.
She said it, not me.
We're all going to say the things, okay? So whether it's burping or tooting, it's both are gas, right? Both are air. So burps are typically air in the stomach and like the upper GI, so it's coming out through the top.
Yeah.
Right? Like farting would be the opposite end, clearly. But like, okay, so you're so embarrassed. I love it.
Welcome to Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your host, Jenn Trepic, talking wellness and weight loss for real life. We're here to clear up the myths, misinformation, bad science, and marketing to teach you how to eat and how to cheat. Are you ready? I'm having salad with a side of fries.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Salad with a Side of Fries. And I'm Jenn Trepic, your host, of course. Stephanie is back with us. And I have to give you a special thank you also for joining me on this episode because I know this is not a topic that is the easiest to talk about.
Thanks, Jenn. No, happy to be here. I actually requested this topic and was like encouraged her to do it. So I'm really glad that you're not only doing it, but that I can be a part of it.
Yay! Okay, so like you said, how this episode came to be. So we were watching March Madness. And so a few weeks ago, right? Stephanie, do you remember how did it even come up? I don't even remember.
I think you were just like, guys, what should I talk about on my podcast? And I had just talked to a friend that kind of had some issues in this area. And I was like, well, I have a suggestion. And then you were like, yeah, I actually get a lot of questions about this. So,
and the truth is, like, this topic has been on my list for almost 2 years, right? Like, since I started the podcast, this topic has been on the list. But admittedly, I haven't touched it because it is... Pardon the pun, but it is this even a pun? Like, it is a loaded topic, right? Like, it's so big that I have resisted talking about it because, as you guys know, like, I don't want to do anything if I'm not going to do it justice. So as we were sitting there watching basketball, talking about poop, I was like, okay, and you're so uncomfortable because I just said the word. You guys, let's all say it together. Poop. Okay, so
I did it. Oh my gosh. It felt so good.
I know, we just got to practice saying it, right? But so I decided the way we can tackle this, at least to start. So we'll consider this part 1, right? And we're going to do this as a Q&A so that we can cover a bit of ground. And then based on where you have further questions or, want to talk more about, then we'll do sort of some follow-up things. Cool?
Cool.
Awesome. Okay, so let's start with our members, though, of course. What are you guys getting this week? So, okay, first of all, so many things you're getting. First, I'm giving you 15% off 4 products that can help support your bowels. So I have 2 that are for you if you're not going enough. I have 1 if you're going too much. And 1 that's basically good for both sides of the equation for all of us for, supporting our gut health. So you get 15% off. And, of course, I had to do 2 recipes. So 1 is a stomach soothing smoothie. I couldn't even say that. Stomach soothing smoothie that has spinach and ginger and chamomile and cucumber and coconut water. It's great. And I have a recipe for prune power balls. No pun intended on the power balls part, but you can guess that these help get things moving, right? So this week's members, you're getting all your bases covered. So if you're not already a member and you're hearing this and thinking you like to get in on these goodies, it's about time. It's never too late, and I really don't know what you're waiting for. So here's what you got to do. Go to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries. For $10 a month, you get weekly recipes. Today you're getting 2. A monthly article or tool. Extra discounts from me and our partners. Today, 15% off. And access to live Q&A sessions each quarter. So It's a bargain. When you take advantage of the full offerings, it is free. And it's really just a super simple, economical way to show yourself that your health is a priority. Plus, by being a member, you're supporting this podcast and this community so we can continue bringing you new episodes and experts. Remember, here's the deal. Go to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries, or forget remembering the URL. Click the link in the show notes. It's right there. After you click the link, you'll click support now, enter your email, payment method, click subscribe, and you're all set. You'll get this week's recipes for the stomach soothing smoothie, the prune power balls, and 15% off 4 incredible products to support your elimination. And of course, I'll note on there, which ones are for excessive elimination, which ones are for constipation, and, which one's really just a good idea for all of us. So I got you covered. Good?
Sounds delicious.
Totally. All right, so Stephanie, hit me with the first question.
Okay. So I know this varies for everybody, and I've never really heard, the jury's out on what the answer is, so I'm hoping you can enlighten me. So how many times a day or a week is considered normal?
I love this question because it gets a jaw drop from everybody. So the way I want to think about a baby, if you've ever been around an infant, how often does an infant go?
Every time they eat.
Bingo. Exactly.
Oh my God.
Every time you eat, there, in theory, with the body, would be an associated bowel movement. That gets messed up.
Yeah. Clearly.
Right? For a lot of reasons. But so if you think about it, if that is proper bowel function, you have a whole new frame of reference for where you sit in the spectrum.
Yeah.
But really, so every time you eat, there should be an associated bowel movement.
Wow. That is crazy. Wow. Our metabolism must go way down after we're
It's not even so much our metabolism. It's more about our gut function.
Yeah.
And our digestive function and digestive health.
Which is so important for everything, right?
So we'll get more into it, I'm sure.
So, okay. So then if you're not going multiple times a day, what qualifies as constipation?
Okay. So this is a good one because scientifically, studies, 20% of people are constipated.
What does that mean?
So constipation means and granted, this is sort of difficult. And like you said, every person is different. But generally, you would qualify as constipated if you have less than 3 bowel movements a week, your stool is hard or dry, or maybe hard and dry. If it's difficult to pass, you are likely constipated. And I would say it doesn't have to be all of those things, although all of those things together are certainly constipated, but you might experience some of those things, and that's an indication of where you're headed, right? This is definitely one of the things where everything is sort of on a spectrum, and if the pendulum is swinging toward one side, you can see where you're headed.
Yeah. Oof. That's not fun.
Yeah.
Ugh. Well, how about just really basic, Jen?
Okay.
Why do we poop in the first place?
Right. It's sort of it's a weird thing, but basically every chemical reaction in the body creates byproducts. So, and all organisms create byproducts with these chemical reactions. So the first piece of elimination is to eliminate the byproducts that our body doesn't need. It's waste, right? Even from the foods we eat, there is waste. So to get rid of the waste, right, our body goes to the bathroom, right? We process it. And, stool, and basically what everybody needs to realize, stool is a lot of bacteria. Some of it's alive, some of it's dead, but it's a lot of bacteria. And it's our gut flushing things out to regulate itself, to regulate the body. There's sloughed off skin cells. There's, the gut lining then regenerates, right? So if that's not happening, that's a problem. There's sometimes undigested food that, gets excreted. So in fact, this sort of brings up like the color. So the color depends on what you're eating and what's being excreted and like, how much bile is being produced. That's going to impact the color too. So we go because our body has to eliminate the toxins and the byproducts that it doesn't need. And by the way, if we're holding onto those things, like snowball into problems, right? We can think about excess toxins and, if this, I'm sure we'll get into this later, but like if we're not going and this stuff is holding on in our body, those undigested foods or byproducts or the things that we don't need can also sit there and sort of ferment. And then we're having other health issues as a result of it, right? So it becomes critically important for our overall health to properly eliminate.
And that's interesting when you said like bacteria and stuff, because I know even now in the age of COVID, like a lot of colleges and even I think New York City was like testing wastewater because they said it can actually show up early and especially in asymptomatic people in stool.
Right.
Which is crazy.
But if you think about it, like bacteria is in there, a lot of our immune system is in the gut. So things are being processed through our digestive system, whether or not we really experience the impact of it elsewhere in our body.
Yeah, it's like crazy. It blew my mind when they were like, we're testing all the wastewater to see where we have COVID clusters.
Yeah, crazy. And P.S. don't want that job.
No, thanks. I think we took a field trip there back in like middle school to like the wastewater treatment plant. I'm good. Oh, good. That's made an impression.
That's amazing.
So back to the constipation stuff, Jen.
Okay.
Like, how do we get things moving if we are constipated?
Okay. So generally, if we're not going with each time we eat, fundamentally, what is likely missing from our nutrition? Fiber. And fiber from a variety of sources. Fat. And water. So, and a lot of people will say to me, no, I drink enough water. Like if you're constipated, you're probably not drinking enough water. You're also probably not eating enough fat. A proper serving of an avocado is like half an avocado. It's not a 16th or an 8th of an avocado. You know, it's not 6 nuts. It's not, and like, again, we've done so many nutrition nuggets on all of these things. Like you can go back and listen about proper servings, but really sufficient fat in our nutrition, like, and especially for those of us who grew up like me in the fat-free food era, we were taught that like fat is the enemy. And so a lot of us didn't get enough fat in our nutrition. And so you'll probably notice if you increase your fat, make sure you're drinking enough water, and then eat enough fiber. So fiber in this context, we want coming from fruits and vegetables.
What about chia seeds?
So this was an article Stephanie sent. So chia seeds are great. Chia seeds have about 7 grams of fiber in like 2 tablespoons of chia seeds, which is great. I actually recommend soaking them before you eat them or drink them. But also raspberries have like 8 or 9 grams of fiber in a cup. So it's also, we want both soluble and insoluble fiber. We want to be getting our fiber from fruits and vegetables as opposed to grains, right? Like we talk about grains all the time. I just find grains to be generally inefficient. Like you have to eat a massive amount of the grain to get the sufficient levels of the nutrients that we're looking for. So when we think of fiber, especially for our bowels, focus on fruits and vegetables, more vegetables than fruit. And enough. So, like I've given the guideline before of like 25 grams of fiber per day. Depending on how old you are and if you're working up to it, you could get to 30 or 35 grams of fiber per day. It's that's also a piece that's really individualized. And if you're eating a ton of fiber every day and you're still not going, then we want to look at the water and the fat pieces and say like, where is the imbalance There's also a few other things which, you know, can impact it. Like if you're always holding it and never going, if you're, you know, that's why I said, like, this is a super complicated topic. So I'm trying to answer each question like succinctly and directly. But so think about like your olive oil, your chia seeds, your avocado. Prunes are a great one, which a lot of people know. That's sort of like a old homeopathic like remedy. But prunes also contain sorbitol, which is a type of sugar alcohol that your body poorly digests or really doesn't absorb. And so that can also help sort of alleviate the constipation, drawing water into the intestines. There is a little bit, you may have heard like coconut oil for constipation. So full disclosure, the science on that is iffy. You know, it's more like anecdotally people say coconut oil helps. I would argue that it helps more because of the fat than because there's something specific to like coconut oil, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then not food things that are really important, but moving your body, like exercise. If you're not moving and twisting, right? Like, you know, they talk a lot about in yoga, like twisting postures are very detoxifying. Think about what's actually happening. You're manually twisting your intestines, which can help stimulate that peristalsis, you know, the muscular contraction around the intestines. So those can be great. And then managing your stress is a big one for the poop thing. And the last piece of it is actually like when you feel like you have to go. Like the longer it stays in you, you know, and the longer it stays in your colon, it becomes drier and drier and therefore harder to pass. So when you feel the need, you got to go.
Oh, yeah. Well, then this brings up an interesting thing I read a couple weeks ago. There's an article about people having a fear, especially women, of going in public. And it was places like at work, people don't feel like comfortable going, and therefore they were holding it, and it was leading down the road to a lot of these problems because they weren't going and they were just resisting the urge.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. Like, first of all, I get it, right? Like, nobody likes going at work. When I worked in an office, I also avoided it, or it's like the dance of like, and you guys all know you've done this, where you like have to go, so you walk in the bathroom and you see if anybody else is in there, and then you like you want to go when nobody else is there, so that you have like that privacy, or you find like the handicap bathroom or like the executive bathroom, right? So that
or like one that hopefully has like, you know, a full like floor to ceiling stall, so like you know, no identifiers, you know.
Totally. So like, I get it, right? Nobody likes to go in public. But the reality is when we hold on to it, so like I said before, it gets drier and harder. The other thing that's super crazy is that your intestines can actually stretch. So if we hold it for a long time and we stretch our intestines, like they lose their tone. And then it makes it difficult for us to go later on. So like I know a lot of people whose kids like won't go, or their kids will hold on to it, and then their kids have a hard time going. Like that's what happens. And fast forward, we could see issues later in life, even with the same thing, you know, because when you got to go, you got to go. There's also, and you guys have heard me talk about it before, like the vagus nerve, right? This nerve that connects the gut and the brain. I could also see it where if we don't go when we feel that need, that like the vagus nerve can basically like lose tone also, or sort of like fall asleep on you, kind of. So it becomes really important. And by the way, like I started to mention this before, but like if we don't go and it's all sitting in there and then our intestines are stretching and losing their tone and things are backing up, we've often seen autoimmune conditions or other GI conditions as a result of the constipation or the not going because things are sort of backing up in your system and then causing issues in, the upper GI and the intestines.
Yeah, well, and especially if you said, it contains a lot of bacteria,
right,
viruses, things that you don't want in your body. Think about like holding that in just because you're embarrassed, I guess, to go when maybe your body is telling you need to go.
Yeah. Like the implications of not going far outweigh whatever potential embarrassment might be. But I also think like poop, 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 let's say it 700 times so that we can like not be embarrassed by it. Like literally every organism on the planet has waste that it has to excrete. So like you're not different than the next person in that way.
Yeah, you're like, yes, it may not be the most fun thing if like your coworker walks in, but at the end of the day, the coworker also does the same thing as you. So yeah,
we gotta get to a place where we are more comfortable talking about it and more comfortable doing it in public. I mean, you don't have to be like an exhibitionist. It's not like, oh, watch me poop
or like announce it.
Yeah, but we gotta just go and we gotta go.
Yeah, agreed. So, okay, shifting a little bit, Jen.
Yeah.
You always hear a lot of people saying, I want to do a crash diet. I got to look good in the bikini, right? I have a vacation coming up in a couple weeks. I want to look good. You hear people taking laxatives, and I heard like that was like popular among like the model culture to drop weight. Like it sounds gross. And I know that laxatives in some cases, sometimes people need them, but people definitely do abuse them. So why is it so dangerous? Why is that not the way to diet?
Okay, so first of all, I want to preface this whole thing by saying using laxatives as a way to drop weight qualifies as an eating disorder.
Yeah.
And if that is where you're at, let's have a further conversation. There's more to talk about, but technically, right, more on the science side of it. So the intention, right, like the idea is that by taking a laxative, we rush the food and the calories out of our system before they're absorbed, right? Like I think that's the hope. But that's not actually how the body works. So basically, by the time a laxative can act on the large intestine, the food and the calories that you've eaten have already been absorbed by the small intestine. So what the laxative does is that it artificially stimulates the large intestine to empty, and then you have a laxative-induced bowel movement, but it doesn't actually contain that much food or fat or calories. It's like we end up losing water, electrolytes, some of the insoluble fiber or sugar alcohols, things like that. Like, and we get rid of waste from the colon, but it's not actually removing body fat. It's not actually eliminating the calorie intake that preceded the laxative, if that makes sense. So like I said, like because what we're losing is water and minerals and things like that, we can end up with, huge health implications long term because it can create permanent damage in the digestive system, including, chronic constipation also, or damaging nerves and muscles of the colon. And so like, we don't realize that losing what we do eliminate is a problem, right? Like severe dehydration, and then you might see like tremors or weakness or blurred vision or like I remember hearing stories of like models fainting, and then with the dehydration, you have potential kidney damage, like it's such a snowball that, it's using laxatives in that way can be a real problem. And a dependency, also can occur and cause the colon to stop reacting as it usually would. And then we have to take larger and larger amounts of the laxatives. It's just a giant snowball. So like, don't do it. I'm like torn if I'm saying this or not. So now that I'm saying this, like I'm just going to have to say it. But the reality is like internal organ damage from, stretched or lazy colon can, colon infection, irritable bowel syndrome, on some rare instances like liver damage, even risks of colon cancer. Like it's really a problem to use these kinds of, laxatives. And then these days, like I hear more than like the laxative thing, I hear about like, oh, should I do a colonic or should I do like a coffee enema?
Yes.
So essentially what those are, so a colonic is like cleaning out the colon from the bottom. Again, maybe on occasion, but one of the things is like it can take out the good stuff and the bad stuff. And then coffee enemas. So I know a doctor who uses them. Essentially what they're supposed to do is like stimulate the vagus nerve from the other end, right? So instead of like when we drink coffee, it makes us go because the caffeine stimulates peristalsis or like the contraction of the muscles around the intestine. So the idea of a coffee enema is like it's doing that from the other side. But the doctor that I know who uses them in very specific situations, like cancer patients, when there's excessive amounts of meds and they don't want the meds getting stuck in your system or keeping these toxins in your body for too long. So, but again, like even in that situation, it's like a Goldilocks thing. Like it has to be just right because especially if you're undergoing treatment, like you don't want to pull out the treatment too soon, but you also don't want it sitting in there for too long. So like, I don't recommend the average person being like, you know what I'm going to do? Like, if you're using that to manage weight, it's in the exact same category as the overuse of laxatives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just doesn't sound like a fun time for me.
Yeah, no.
But also you said, I mean, it's in a doctor's office, so it is supervised, hopefully.
Right.
If you need it.
Right. I would recommend not doing like an at-home kit.
No.
But this brings up, so one of the 4 things that I'm sending to our members are these aloe pills. So it's a tiny little gel cap that has the part of the aloe plant that makes us go. And by taking it as a pill, like in this little gel cap, it gets it to the large intestine where we want that to be, rather than a lot of other things that you might take where it's acting sooner in the system.
Yeah.
Right? So if your issues are sort of in the later part of the digestive tract, you want to use these aloe pills. And they're, obviously, if you are under the care of a health professional, I always recommend talking to your health professional. But they are a much safer way to stimulate the release, if you will, than a laxative or,
Yeah.
an enema.
Yeah. Oh, makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. What about like the fiber supplements?
Okay. So fiber supplements also fall into this category of we need to be careful. Because, so like as a general rule, I don't love fiber supplements. Like I said before, we want our fiber to be coming from our vegetables and our fruit. A lot of the fiber supplements contain a single source of fiber versus a variety. They can pull out the good bacteria with the bad bacteria. So, that's a problem, right? It just takes everything with it when we use a lot of these fiber supplements. Excessive amounts of fiber, you might also have, cramping or gas or bloating, like especially if you're looking at, ramping up your fiber intake, you need to do that over time. Fiber supplements are not over time. They are a big blast. So for example, I had a client who it sort of started from taking a bunch of meds after a medical procedure and snowballed into some serious gut issues. And I met him. He was referred to me by his physical therapist like 4 years after this has been going on, and he has like crazy chronic diarrhea. and he is maybe eating like 4 foods total. And one of the things to compensate for the fact that he was eating 4 foods was that he was taking this like protein shake. Well, that protein shake also had 10 grams of fiber in each shake. When I met him, he was taking it 4 times a day.
Wow.
So, like, we have to be really careful. We have to read labels. We have to know what we're doing. Digestive issues can also come from excessive fiber, and there can be long-term health implications of that too. Like I said, like it can take out the good stuff with the bad stuff. So second thing I'm giving our members is a fiber powder that I do like. It also has some probiotics in it, and healthy gut flora in it. It has multiple sources of fiber, which I like. And I would say don't take it every day. Like we don't want our body to rely on these supplements instead of our nutrition. Like we can't supplement our way out of poor nutrition ever, including with fiber.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, let's do a quick break for our partner, from our partner for this episode. And like, I appreciate that they're sponsoring this episode because it's like we've been talking like down and dirty. So this is like higher in the body and cleaner, right? So our partner is Lumiere de Vie Skincare. So Lumiere de Vie Skincare was founded by Amber Ridinger McLaughlin in response to her own experience of mere marginal results from countless costly creams. She realized the revitalization of her youthful skin could only occur if she developed products herself. Working closely with beauty scientists and exploring the most advanced ingredients derived from the earth and sea, Amber created Lumiere de Vie, the next generation of skincare. The extensive line of luxury skincare products are designed to address all skin types and concerns with the highest quality natural ingredients and powerful formulas that help heal, soothe, moisturize, and protect. Lumiere de Vie acts as first aid for your skin. The result? Rejuvenated, luminous, beautiful looking skin. So I started recently using their vitamin C serum. I love it. Literally, I think like after I use it, I feel like my skin is instantly brighter. And part of that I know is in my head, but also legit, like it's amazing. It also works over time. So I'm also excited to see like what happens as I keep going. And interestingly enough, so remember a couple weeks ago, we had an episode all about skin health. And our guest, Natasha, talked about a niacinamide product and a hyaluronic acid. Lumiere de Vie launched 2 new serums. One is a hyaluronic acid. And the hyaluronic acid one ships late April and for $40. And the niacinamide product ships mid-May and is $44. So you can pre-order them now. You can get the vitamin C serum that I've been using now already. And because you're a Salad with a Side of Fries listener, you get 10% off your order. So text the word SKIN, S-K-I-N, to 844-947-4846. You'll receive the link and coupon code right to your phone. Again, simply text the word SKIN to 844-947-4846 to try the Lumiere de Vie skincare and get 10% off. This is a toll-free number. Standard text and data rates may apply. All right, Stephanie, I turn it back over to you.
Okay. Well, okay, so in a couple weeks, I'm going on my first vacation that I've been on since
Congrats.
2019. Yes, yeah. I'm very excited, but I'm sure a lot of people listening want to like know this is, sometimes when you're on vacation, it throws off your routine.
It does. And
you tend to get backed up. And it's the worst, especially when you're going to like a beach vacation, having that feeling of like, ooh, I just feel backed up. So what do we do and why does it happen?
Okay, so I have a theory that like the pressure from the airplane creates like pressure in our intestines and like packs it all together. So that was my theory. That was not actual science. And
I've heard that though.
Probably from me. But I do think, but we also talk a lot about planes being dehydrating. Mm-hmm. Right? So there is some science about the air pressure making you feel like bloated and gassy. And so, like, yes, the air in the cabin is pressurized, but that's really different than the air pressure that we're used to, ground level. And so that lower pressure can cause gas in our gut to expand. And that creates like the gassing and the bloating. But also that pressure and the dehydration dehydrate what is sitting in our colon and then make it harder to go. So the airplane plays a factor in this. The other thing is recognizing all the things that regularity actually, like, that impact regularity, right? So what impacts regularity? When you eat, what you eat, when you're sleeping, the quality of your sleep, your exercise, yes, healthy gut bacteria, the environment that you're in, your stress. So all the things that create regularity are all of the things that change when we're on vacation. Mm-hmm. So vacation might be a good time to bring some of the fiber with you. Vacation might be a good time to make sure you're getting some extra water. Maybe bring some greens with you. We talked about algae, right? Maybe bring some energy bits and tablets with you so that it can help you, get some of the vitamins and the minerals that your body needs. Like I said, make sure you're drinking enough water. Actually exercise when you're on vacation. That'll help get things moving.
Oh, I do. I'm one of those crazy people.
But it's actually, I do too. And part of it is not like, oh, I'm on vacation, so that means I don't exercise. I approach it as like, I'm on vacation. I get to do the things that make me feel good. And this is one of the things that makes me feel good. But also, if you're the kind of person who stops eliminating after a plane ride, or it takes a couple days once you get to a new place, adding that in might be a big factor in helping you sort of stay regular when traveling.
Yeah. All good tips. I'm going to put those to use. So, okay, again, when you're on vacation, you maybe go out a little more. So we all know that like alcohol has a big effect on that. And so what's the science behind that stuff?
Okay. So, oh boy. Okay. So alcohol, as we've talked about before, is a toxin. Byproducts of alcohol are toxins. And that's like the perfect storm for GI distress, or I don't even know what you want to call it, but like GI activity, right? So alcohol also can irritate the lining of our intestines, and technical term, it's the epithelial layer. And when the lining gets irritated, it loses a lot of its absorption. So therefore, we're not absorbing, so we're expelling more. And then the alcohol, so technically the alcohol suppresses the secretion of what's called vasopressin, and it's an antidiuretic hormone that regulates our body's water retention. So then that's why too, like it was like, remember in college, it was like, don't break the seal, because once you start peeing, you're gonna have to pee all the time.
Oh yeah.
So that's why. So similar to how it inhibits our ability to like retain water, right? So that excess water trying to get out of our system also includes pooping. So then there's also ethanol in alcohol, which increases gut motility, right? Like the activity of our gut. So that means that whatever is in our colon starts to move faster. And then, so there was actually a study in 2002 that looked at chronic alcohol consumption, and it can actually make the mucosal barrier more permeable. And when we think about the mucosal barrier of our gut, right, and the permeability, or if it becomes more permeable, meaning things can get through, that's what's called leaky gut syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
Leaky gut syndrome is also connected to a vast majority of autoimmune challenges. It decreases our stomach's ability to destroy bad bacteria. And now you have this whole snowball effect. So as we all know, alcohol in moderation, but there is a distinct connection between alcohol and gut health.
Wow. Crazy. Well, not even alcohol, but like, how about other medications? Like, how does that affect it?
So medications can affect us in a couple different ways. So a lot of medications, even like antacids, by the way, are very dehydrating. So again, going back to what we had talked about with, God, now I don't even have words, with constipation, dehydration plays a big factor in that. So a lot of medications, like painkillers, antidepressants, especially antipsychotics, antacids, even some over-the-counter painkillers, not even like, massive ones, right? They sort of create this dehydration situation. The other side of that, when we look at antibiotics, so antibiotics kill everything. They don't just like single out the bad things. They kill everything, which means they kill the good stuff too. And that creates a dysbiosis. So then when we talk about gut health, right, we need the good bacteria. So using meds and antibiotics can snowball into chronic gut health issues if we're not replenishing the good bacteria. So if you are ever on an antibiotic, you need to be taking probiotics. If you are on antibiotics for a long time, you need to be taking probiotics for even longer. Like, I recommend taking them at the same time, certainly for a while after. Probiotics are generally a good idea for most people because we've taken things over the years, because we eat foods, because maybe we've done some things that don't necessarily support our proper gut health, like maybe drinking a couple times. Whatever. Listen, it's no secret that I like a good drink, so whatever. But so probiotics is one of the other things that I'm sending to our members is a high quality probiotic that I also take. And so that can help, especially around the medications.
Yeah, I take one every day. And I just remember even when I was younger, like anytime I had to go on antibiotics, my mom was like, make sure you eat yogurt. Make sure you eat yogurt. Like, because they have that bacteria whatever, the good bacteria.
Right. But that's the thing. It's like, I would say, so once in the last 10 years, can I remember a doctor saying to me, if you decide to take this antibiotic, you need to be taking a probiotic.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's getting to be more typical, but like kudos to your mom, because I think that like not a lot of people know that or realized it, certainly not so much when we were kids. And, hopefully now it's like common knowledge. That's why we're doing this. Hopefully this is all going to become common knowledge. But yeah, probiotics can be really important, especially with medications.
Yeah. Yeah, and I even know, like, if somebody has surgery or is in the hospital after anesthesia, like, that can make it very difficult to go. And that's actually one of the markers of health is, like, when you have that first, bowel movement after being on anesthesia.
And that's why they'll talk about hydration, too, following anesthesia. Making sure you get enough water replenished.
Yeah, it's like a celebratory thing in the hospital. They're just like, yay, okay, good, you're healthy. You can go home now.
Yeah.
Okay, so kind of related, like, can we talk about gas and burps? I know they're natural. And again, same thing, I guess, with like not holding it in public. Like, you're supposed to release it. Again, not proper etiquette really anywhere.
Right.
So... would love tips on that. But also, like, what does it mean? And what if you have, like, what is excessive?
Yeah. Okay. So it's so interesting because, like, neither is inherently bad, right? And by gas, I'm assuming you mean, like, farting and tooting and whatever. I'm saying it, you guys.
She said it, not me.
We're all going to say the things, okay? So whether it's burping or tooting, it's both are gas, right? Both are air. So burps are typically air in the stomach and like the upper GI, so it's coming out through the top.
Yeah.
right? Like farting would be the opposite end, clearly. But like, okay, so you're so embarrassed. I love it. Okay. So think about what makes us swallow air, right? Sometimes just even drinking liquids.
Or eating too fast.
Eating too fast, drinking liquids, especially drinking bubbly liquids, can create air in the stomach that then makes us burp. Acid reflux, gastrointestinal reflux, it's technically gastroesophageal reflux disease. They can sometimes create excessive burping, and that also creates a desire to swallow. And so then when you swallow, you're swallowing more air. And so it's like this vicious cycle. So if you're experiencing any sort of reflux or things like that, digestive enzymes to help calm the stomach. But like, again, burping isn't inherently bad. If it's excessive, it could be a sign of something else, and you would want to talk to your healthcare provider. And going back to those antacids that we talked about, which can cause problems for elimination, I don't recommend treating your reflux with antacids because that's not always necessarily the cause of the reflux. And again, that could be a whole other episode onto itself. So just think about, burping is air in the stomach, right? So if you drink water and you tend to swallow a lot of air, or you have like those big gulps that you're like, I didn't get that much water, but that was a lot of air, you're probably going to burp. Or if you drink fizzy things, you're probably going to burp. It doesn't mean something's bad. It's actually a good sign that your body is responding and getting rid of it.
Well, and that's why you're supposed to like burp a baby, right?
Right.
Like after they eat, you're supposed to burp them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
so then the other side, right, when we have gas, although I feel funny using that term because both are gas, but so that is air in our intestines, right? Specifically the small intestine or the colon. And that could be caused by digestion, fermentation of undigested food. Could be bacteria in the bowel. So, this also happens if like our food isn't fully breaking down, right? Certain components in the food. So that might be gluten, a lot of grains. It could be sugar in dairy products. It could be some sugar in fruit. It could be, a whole other list of things. So, it's not inherently bad, right? It's a sign of our body functioning to some degree that the gas is getting out. But again, we want to sort of look at how often it's happening. So this can sort of also snowball into like the bloat thing. So I see a lot on social media about bloating, and just because it happens to a lot of people doesn't mean it's normal, right? So bloating tends to be caused by dysbiosis, stress, or even the pancreas like not producing enough of the right enzymes, or not enough of the right enzymes in a timely manner for them to be used. So it's a lot of like undigested food sitting there that's creating the bloat. So with any of these, whether it's, belching or farting or bloat, and I'm saying all the words, right? So with any of these, is it chronic? Is it painful? Is it interfering with daily life? Like, are we opting out of life things because of these symptoms? That's when we want to talk to our healthcare provider. Like, all of the stuff that we're talking about today is this weird Goldilocks situation of, yeah, on occasion, sometimes that makes total sense. Like, the just right amount, right, is different for everybody. But if we're in these extremes, we need to be talking to our healthcare provider.
Yeah, and you actually brought up a good thing, too. Like, if it's not normal, like, I noticed for me personally, like, certain foods trigger that more, right?
Yes.
And then that's kind of like, ooh, maybe I should not eat so much dairy, right? Or cheeses, or, spicy foods for some people, like, trigger both ways. And you can kind of see that, because when you don't eat a lot of it and then you do, you're like, oh, wow, I really notice a difference. So maybe it's like, I should not have that food.
Right. But even like being able to associate those symptoms with whatever food, because sometimes those symptoms can happen 3 days later. Like, it's not always immediate. So it makes the argument going, as I always say, it makes the argument for tracking.
Yeah.
So that we have the data, because we don't always remember.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So when you have those types of bodily functions, sometimes they're just like under the radar and you're like, oh, thank God. Doesn't embarrass. And then sometimes, we have something that creates a little bit more sensation, right? Like it smells.
Right. Okay.
And so why do some and why do others not?
So on the gas front, like why do some smell and why do others not? I don't totally know. I think some of it has to do with the source and the bacteria and like what's causing it, right? Like, is it undigested food that's likely going to smell different than something else? But like in general, like why does our poop smell? So like if we think about what it is, right? It's waste product and bile. So like, of course it's going to smell.
Well, if you
right?
use poopery
Right.
prior.
Right. But also like inflammation can impact the odor. So like if the odor is really exaggerated and consistently exaggerated, it might be an indication of something. Alcohol, huge meals, right? Those are going to make it smell more or differently than usual. And so full disclosure, I don't know if this is like fact or folklore. Like, I don't know, but it actually makes sense to me. So there's this idea that it smells because in like caveman times, it was how, like there weren't bathrooms. So like you sort of just shit anywhere.
Yeah.
And so at least if it smelled, somebody knew that it was shit and not food.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
But again, like I don't know if that's actually real or like, I don't know. But it does have some sort of
and then
logic.
it kind of goes with that phrase,
Right.
like you don't want to shit where you eat.
Shit where you eat, yeah. Although, yeah. But yes.
In the most literal sense, right?
Exactly.
In the literal
Exactly.
application there. Gosh. So we've talked about constipation.
Yeah.
And the fact that, you're dehydrated, that's not good, what to get it moving. But what about the other extreme? Like what if, you have an upset stomach and you can't stop going, and God forbid that ever happens, like when you're at a work function, or, I know for me, when I went to Mexico, I was on a work trip and I was deathly afraid to like do
Right.
anything that might like trigger that, because,
Right.
sometimes they're like, don't eat, anything that's not
Don't
cooked.
drink the water.
Don't drink
Right.
the water. Like brush your teeth with bottled water. So,
Right.
yeah.
So that the whole like when you travel thing is because there are different bacteria in their water than what our body is used to. So our body is going to respond to this foreign bacteria, right? So viruses, bacteria, parasites, right? These contaminated food,
yeah. Poisoning.
yeah, like these can all create diarrhea. And think about diarrhea as our body's desire to eliminate and get rid of whatever is causing the upset. So like, again, it serves a function. Or if we eat a meal that has a whole lot of fiber, or we have, like we're lactose intolerant and we have dairy, like it makes sense that our bowels are going to respond, right? Sometimes artificial sweeteners can cause issues. Surgery, like we had talked about before, like there's a lot of things that can create sort of gastrointestinal upset. And so sometimes the way that the body responds to that is greater elimination or looser elimination, right? Like to get this stuff out. So like everything, on occasion, not a problem. When it becomes chronic, it could be an indication of a parasite or a bacteria that is growing and, that we weren't able to eliminate. It could also be an indication of some other, like Crohn's, colitis, celiac, even irritable bowel syndrome. Like it could be a whole lot of things. So again, on occasion, no big deal. all the time, no matter what you eat, no matter what's going on, you'll want to talk to your healthcare provider. You may also want to consider a high quality magnesium. So this is another piece of what I'm sending our members is some magnesium. So you might also hear people saying, oh, you want bananas. You know, there's, you know, there are some quote unquote diets that are designed to treat, in air quotes, you know, chronic diarrhea or things like that. And basically what those are doing are just easier to digest, little to no fiber kinds of foods. And by the way, it's like bananas, rice, toast. So like if those are the things that are recommended when we have chronic diarrhea because they have little fiber, right? It's just an indication of like, hey, guess what? Your toast is not your best source of fiber.
Yeah.
P.S.
Yeah.
Sidebar. But, you know, sometimes in that is also like applesauce, which again, I would highly recommend make sure it is organic. Make sure it has nothing added to it. Like if you're choosing, that's by the way, the brat diet, the bananas, rice, applesauce, and toast. But I prefer to look at some foods like the banana or some, you know, whole brown rice that are a little more binding. And then, you know, maybe some magnesium that's also kind of binding. The interesting thing about magnesium also is that it supports like the relaxation of soft tissue. So soft tissue is our muscles and our, you know, like ligaments and tendons and all that. So a lot of times what happens is that peristalsis, right? The muscles around our intestines are on overdrive. So we think of the magnesium to help relax that. And then it can help with some of the chronic diarrhea.
Interesting. So. And I even know, like, when I'm sick and I don't feel well, like, I love me just some, like, plain rice.
Yeah.
With, like, butter or just, like, plain toast. You know, even if you're not having diarrhea, but maybe you're vomiting, right? Kind of, is that, like, the same deal?
Yeah, it's kind of like, you know, again, it's almost like the burp versus the fart. Like, where in the intestine or the digestive tract is this happening?
Yeah.
You know, and, like, diarrhea when you're sick, it's your body trying to eliminate this bacteria or the virus or whatever, you know, the pathogen is.
Yeah. Same with, I guess, throwing up.
Yeah. Exactly.
Oh, so, okay. And you said Goldilocks, you know, happens occasionally.
Yeah.
Kind of know how to, like, remedy it. But, like, when does it get to a point when you should talk to your doctor? And also, like, why are people so afraid to talk about some of these things with their healthcare provider?
Yeah. First of all, I wish I knew the answer to why. Like, my 2 cents of why. Like, I think it's something that we do in private. And we all have a tendency to not talk about the things that we do in private. So, like, people don't talk about it. People also don't talk about the details of childbirth, but we should be. So, like, just because we don't do it doesn't mean that that's the right thing, right? So I think we all need to, it's why I said poop maybe 100 times in the last, what are we at, hour almost? You know, like, I think it's really important that we get more comfortable talking about it. And I think we just don't, because we don't talk about things we do in private, you know? And, you know, I think we need to be talking about it. It's complicated, you know. It's a cultural thing that we don't talk about it. It's not necessarily the most comfortable thing, I think, you know, but that exacerbates the problems. You know, I mean, Chadwick Boseman.
Yeah.
Colorectal cancer. Like.
Yeah. I've known a few people that are younger than, you know, what they say is the target for colorectal cancer. And you hear, like, more and more younger people in their 30s.
Yeah.
Are coming down with colorectal cancer. And if you catch it early, it actually is pretty treatable. But it's when you kind of let it go and you don't talk about it or you don't recognize the signs that there's an issue. And that's why it's important to, like,
exactly
track
so
it.
It's interesting. So there was a Forbes article that I know you and I both saw. So in that article, it said colorectal cancer is the third most common cancer type diagnosed in the United States in both men and women.
Wow.
Which is kind of crazy because we don't talk about it that much.
No, you talk about breast cancer,
right.
Skin cancer, lung cancer,
And it said too in this article, the overall numbers of people diagnosed with this disease is falling slightly, but increases by about 2% every year in people under the age of 50.
Wow.
And so they've lowered the recommended screening age to 45. But what often isn't talked about is if you have any sort of chronic bowel issue or digestive issue or autoimmune issue, anything in the gut, it increases our risk factors, basically. So those people probably need to start getting those screenings earlier than 45. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's not happening either. Like our doctors aren't talking about it.
Yeah.
And by the way, another factor of why we don't talk about it with our doctors is because they're not asking. Like our doctors don't ask about our nutrition. Our doctors generally don't ask about our sleep. They generally don't ask about our stress or a lot of these things. And like some do, but not as a given. And so if your doctor's not asking about your poop, volunteer it.
They asked about it when you were a baby. They'll
right?
ask the mom, they'll say, is he or she having regular bowel movements? And they're
right.
like, great.
And so I think it's something that like, if nothing else, share with your doctor at your annual or whenever you go to the doctor, share with them whatever is most typical and how often maybe some of these atypical things are happening so that at least it's documented there. And then if you go back a year later, at least there's some sort of history to say, hey, you know what? Last year, this was only happening like maybe a few times a year. And now you're telling me it's happening about every week. There's something happening here. Mm-hmm. So like we need to be having those conversations. And if they're not asking, then volunteer it.
And I guess it's one of the things that you can like self-check every day.
Well, exactly. I mean, and this is one thing too, like our bowel movements actually say a lot about our overall health. Like if you notice changes in, and I'm going to go there, in the color, the shape, the texture, based on what you eat, that's a really good sign, right? If you notice a difference on occasion, that's awesome, right? That's a sign of like our bowels are responding. But, if the color becomes extreme, like if it's super green, that's like an excess of bile, or you maybe ate a ton of spinach or algae, but like I would say those are different shades of green. But, if it's black, sometimes that can be iron, or if it's all the time, right, that can be an indication of blood in your stool. Again, like it's back to that Goldilocks thing, but, it's really important to pay attention and to notice because it says a lot about our health. Noticing those changes could be a sign of infection or the digestive issues, or, maybe it is a sign of something more serious happening in our system. So, do you have abdominal pain? Do you have a change in the habits, right? Or unexplained weight loss? That would be an indication that like something more is going on. Like sometimes yay, and sometimes like, whoa, not really, So, another thing, if it always takes a long time, like you have to sit there for a long time, likely some dehydration issues or potentially some other challenges. Like it's something to keep an eye on. If you have a tracker, track this too. And if you want to, because you don't want to write poop and get descriptive on your tracker, like come up with your own coding system. Maybe give it a number, right? But your own awareness is so important because that's what's going to give us the indication of, is this all the time? Is this once in a while? Is it impacting the things that I do in my life every single day? Then we need to be talking to our healthcare providers. Mm-hmm. Okay, Stephanie, we're like an hour in. I think that does it. I think we need to call it on part one. Did we make it through all the questions that you had?
We did.
Okay,
I mean,
awesome.
this was like very comprehensive and I think just informative, right? Like I learned a lot of things that I didn't know. And I think to your point, like we need to normalize it. I'm not saying go out with your friends and talk about this at the
why not?
Your happy hour. I mean, you can.
We did.
We did. But I think it's okay, right? It's like that book, like everybody poops. Like it's okay.
Exactly.
And it really is a huge indicator of your health and something that, when you don't, you know how it feels.
Exactly. And I appreciate you pushing me to do this because, again, I think we need to be having these conversations. And also with how many articles have shown up since we talked about this.
Oh, my God.
Like, we're all on the same page. We need to be having these conversations. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Are you ready for this week's nutrition nugget?
Yes.
Okay. Today, we are talking about what I call 30-30-30. So this is actually more of a movement-focused nutrition nugget, which
helps.
It
goes
helps
along with the theme.
Yes. And we haven't really done these, but so I'll go through what it is and then when and why.
Okay.
Okay, so 30-30-30 is 30 push-ups, 30 squats, 30 crunches.
Whew. Okay.
Okay. If you need it to be a little different, you could do 30 jumping jacks, a 30-second plank, 30 arm circles.
Ooh, okay.
Okay. Or, because I've also had a lot of clients who are older or maybe have some joint issues or need something with like no impact, right? You could actually do, I created one for you that is entirely sitting in a chair. So you can do 30 leg lifts, 30 tricep dips, and 30 side bends.
Nice.
So basically, any combination of 3 exercise is 30 each or 30 seconds. And so when do we use this? So you can actually use it all the time. And we used to talk about this in the context of like how to get more movement in your day, like do it at a commercial break when you're watching a TV show. But like nobody watches commercials anymore. So what does it look like now, right? So I have it all the time where I have like 2 minutes before the next call or the next Zoom meeting or whatever it is. And it's like, what can I get done in 2 minutes? This.
Yeah.
Or the credits are rolling and you're watching Netflix count down to starting the next episode. And you know that you're going to have like the opening theme song, whatever it's called, like on the next one. You could do this.
Yeah.
In that time. And the idea is really, like the why then, right? Is to do it to get more movement throughout our day, right? So I always say move your mass, right? So our bodies were not designed to sit all day, right? We keep hearing like sitting is the new smoking. But the other side of that is like it's also not human to sit all day and then go berserk for an hour.
Right.
Like we all do it. I do it too. But our body actually responds really well to small amounts of movement more often. So here's the thing. Doing this 30-30-30 does not mess up your makeup, does not mess up your hair, does not mess up your clothes. And I know that because I did it right before we recorded.
Nice.
And I timed it for you too. So the 30 push-ups, squats, and crunches took me 1 minute, 57 seconds. The jacks, plank, arm circles took me 1 minute and 16 seconds. And the chair one with the leg lifts, the triceps, and the side bends took me 1 minute and 25 seconds. And I did all of them in jeans, with makeup on, my hair down, glasses on my face. Like, you can do this.
And I'm sure you can mix it up too. Like if you wanted to do jacks and then push-ups.
Yeah.
Or arm circles and tricep dips.
Yeah.
You want to just do the upper body portion of it.
Right. I mean, go bananas, right? Like the idea, you could even do one that's even like just more stretching focus. Like stand up, like reach to the ceiling, touch the ground, reach to the ceiling, touch the ground. Like what the idea is to move our mass more often in smaller amounts. And these little bits add up to a whole lot, and our body responds really well to that. So this nutrition nugget is coming with a challenge.
Ooh.
So I'm going to challenge you to do 30, 30, 30 3 times in one day this week.
Okay.
Okay. If you want to level up the challenge,
Always.
because I know you guys, if you want to level up the challenge, 3 times per day on 3 days
All right.
over the next week. And then the trick is you have to report back. I want to know how it goes. What did you feel? What did you notice? How was your sleep? How was your energy? And did your bowels move more, fitting for this week's episode? So there you go. The 30, 30, 30. Challenge accepted?
Challenge accepted.
Are you up leveling?
Of course.
Okay.
We're always kicking it up a notch.
Excellent. Well, thank you again for hanging out today.
Thanks, Jen, for doing this.
Absolutely. So as always, I'm your host, Jenn Trepeck. Connect with me on all the social media with the handle @Jenn Trepeck, JENNTREPECK. And I absolutely would love nothing more than to hear from you, especially with this week's episode. What questions do you have? What do you want to cover in part 2 of this conversation? And if you're ready to remove the quarantine 15 as we get back into life and you want some additional accountability, my next group starts later in April. So send me a message. We can chat about that too. If you're not already, join our membership program by going to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries to get this week's recipes for the stomach soothing smoothie, the prune power balls, and 15% off these 4 incredible products to support your healthy elimination. So it was probiotics, magnesium, these aloe pills, and a high quality fiber powder. So there you have it. All of these supporting both excessive elimination and constipation. I've got you covered. So remember, everybody, it is okay to go. Even more, it is healthy to go, healthy to talk about it. So keep the conversation going and the toilet paper rolling. I couldn't help myself. I had to do it. Okay, we will see you back here next Wednesday.
Well, friends, that's it for today's episode of Salad with a Side of Fries. Congratulations for making yourself and your health a priority. Thanks so much for joining us. Be sure to click subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform. Share us with a friend, and we'll be back next week. Always remember, you deserve it, and you are worth it. Happy healthy.